Pale morning duns are one of our most prominent mayfly that occur throughout all over the country, and very much a part of our western fishing. And this is really a superb pattern because you're going to be able to see the wings, going to ride low in the water, very similar to Comparadun, except I think you're going to like even the way it floats a lot better. It will support having an emerger or a nymph underneath it, even in small sizes. We tie this down to size 20. I might say somebody ties it down to size 20. I let Umpqua tie them over in Thailand when it gets down to size 20, even 18s. Okay, so we've started out here with the elk hair. Now what I'm doing is I'm pulling out this, see all this junk that's in here? I'm running my finger through it. Now you can run a comb through that if you want. I've just been used to doing it this way for so long I don't use a comb, but combs can be good. Now this is, what I'm going to do is grabbing the ends and pulling it around. That's causing the smaller stuff to fall out. This is again what we call side posting. We use it a lot when we do calf tail. Again, moving it around. We're just about ready to try this. I always start with a lot more elk hair than what I think I'm going to end up with. Again, we use our gape. We'll see what happens after we stack it. Here we go in the stacker. Say the magic words. Harry Potter. I guess I'm not supposed to say Harry Potter. Maybe it's Trey. Now, you know what happened? It stuck in there, and that can happen a lot. And something you really should get some bounce and run. That's a fabric softener, and run it through your tools. I've been doing a lot of seminars, and boy, my the static electricity from this hair has really got to it. I opened it up, and it just boom. Just stuck right there, so I gave it a shake and it stayed there. Yeah, that looks better. Now let's look at it against our gape. Looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. Okay, now we're going to trim the butt ends. I always like to know, trim the butt ends, because then it can tell me whether it's slipped or not. I'm going to switch hands so it's going this direction with the tips to the front. Measure about the length of the shank. Now we're going to take our thread another halfway, and that's where our body's going to end right at that point, and a wing's going to go up, and we're going to have this area clear. So let's see if we can do that. Okay, we'll tie it in. Now this is a little tricky at first here. Now I'm going to switch scissors because this is the wrong scissor, because I've got to trim this hair really tight, and you'll see why. Because the problem with using elk hair on this fly and some of the other materials is it bulks up. Now, one of the reasons we were able to tie this in small sizes was the ability for us to keep the thread from bulking up, and that's why we use that 8/0 Goodbroid. And that's a thread that it's absolutely critical in this fly. 8/0 Goodbroid, and it actually is about the size of about 10/0. They actually even make a 10/0, which, geez, I don't know what that's the size of, but it certainly isn't 10/0. This is, as you can see, just right here tying, it's really not bulking up. And that's what made this fly so hard to tie, is the bulkiness. And the reason I need these good scissors, this happens to be a titanium scissor. It's a new one, or tungsten. I said titanium, it's really tungsten. And you notice right now that I've got it in, I think, pretty good, and I've got to go to the front. One of the problems is you get too much hair, makes that body bigger too. Okay, now we're going to move our thread to the front and make sure that, we're pretty good. We're right in that halfway point. We've got to have this room right here so that we tie our hackle off. Now we're going to go around the post. Now you're going to find this different than calf hair. I would recommend you tying the Adams or the Blue Wing Ollie first before you tackle this fly, because this is a lot trickier. I think if I would have tackled the elk first, this fly may not have come into existence. I think I would have torn my hair out, which little of it I have left, but I probably would have done some act of violence before I got this thing worked out. Lee was a little leery about the elk hair. You know, there were several wolf patterns made out of elk hair, but they were really Dan Bailey's invention. Lee did all the wolves basically with bucktail, of all things. Dan was the one that put in the calf tail. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide that. I'm looking at this so that I want to be able to divide it. Now I'm going to get on the other side with my head. I'm going to run over here and look at it. I've been tying from here just so that I make sure that I got it divided equally. Now if it's too light on one side, it's not going to balance out right. So I really want to make sure that I get this right. I come back over, look at it, kind of spinning around, and make sure that I do have it right. Now what I'm doing is I'm running the thread in between them. I've built a post up down below here, as we did on the Blue Wing Olive. Now I'm going to wrap through it. Now once I feel that I've got this thing divided well enough, as you can see right here, well, then we'll post them. Now I'm going to tilt my vise. If you've got a vise that tilts, it really will help. And notice how this hair just, this thread just grips that hair. And that's why it's so wonderful. It's not slipping at all. I'm doing side posting on both sides. And we're now getting those wings to divide up. This is a problem because this will want to come together. That's why you have to make a lot of wraps and you need this lighter thread. I can guarantee you if you go down to a 12 or a 14 with something like uni thread and try to tie this fly, you will have a tough time and you will not be able to do it. You need this kind of thread. This reminds a lot of the old silk. Now, I would not use this thread for tying down any hair like an elk hair caddis or any of that type of thing. It just doesn't have the strength. But for this, what we're doing here, it works out great. Now, I'm going to move that around a little bit, and I think we're in pretty good shape. As you can see, the wings look great. What we formed is a Y. Y. The divided wing, and then a post, which we're going to wrap around, which is right there. And you don't need a lot of wraps of hackle on this fly. Now you notice I've got a pretty good body built up just with the thread, and it's nice and tapered. So you've got to be very, very sparse. Now what I tend to do is not use, the Arizona Crystal Rabbit, but I use Superfine. Superfine is very fine right here, as you can see. It's just like its name. It's a polypropylene. And it sounds like clothing, polypropylene. Poly thread, I guess is the proper term. Floats really nicely. And I've got a pale watery dun. It's really a pale yellow. And we're going to then add the infamous rainbow thread, which I know I've dropped things a lot. We need something on our laps that just everything sticks to. Okay, one strand's all we need. Now you might ask, what's the value of running a strand through here? But I'll tell you, I've had great luck with it. People always are commenting how it looks so nice. And I know when we experimented with this fly in New Zealand, and I got to get some wax here, get it over there. And the guides in New Zealand all insisted on having the rainbow thread woven through it when they experimented. Before we brought it out in Umpqua, we had 3 seasons. We wanted 3 complete seasons of using it with our guides before we knew it was be a pattern. Now, very sparse. I can't tell you. I've actually put it on more. I'm doing too much talking, and I know you're listening to me, and I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. And I've got this in my right hand, and there we go. It's got to be very sparse. That's actually heavier than I would have liked to have had. Now as we move up here, got a little piece of black, I don't know, whatever it was, it stuck to it. Bad thing about wax, everything sticks to it, including deer hair if you have any left on your bench. That's actually pretty good. There it is, a piece of marabou or something. There we go. And now we're going to go to the front and do the same thing. Now be very careful that you don't dub this right up to the post and cover the post up. Then you will have a tough time wrapping your hackle. Now at this point we've got to make sure that this is built up right there. Right there is important. That has to have a nice build up area. It would of course be our thorax. Really a thorax type fly where the thorax is very prominent. And now this is a little heavier than I would have liked. I think that I could have worked at it. It could have probably had to have been a little sparser, but it will certainly work. But I always judge every fly and try to do better on it. I've never tied the perfect fly, guarantee you. Always something I find wrong with it, and that's why we keep working on that. Okay, now we're going to put on even 18s. I saw some the other day that were 20s. I mean, it's just amazing what we can get with saddles. Now I'm going to use a dark dun, or light dun, excuse me. I use the dark dun on the Blue Wing Always, light dun on the pale morning duns. It's almost even a cream. Some people will use cream. And I don't think it really makes that much difference. All the hackle's going to do is support the fly. Now we're going to tie it in so that the vein, the glossy side is up, is a part of that wing is right closest to us. And you can actually see it sticking out right there. There it is. I'm going to trim it off. There we go. So let's take a look at this here. Let's tilt it a little bit and you can see it. It's right tied in there. There's the base right there. Now, again, the thread is in front. We're going to go back around and tie this fly again. For the sake of time, I'm not going to put any cement in there, but I would definitely drop a little cement. Again, this thing is going to, you can see it's holding pretty good. So if you catch a fish, just remember, push your fingers down before you tie it again. When you tie it back, dry it out and put your floating on it. Okay, now I've gone around the wing. Now, you don't really need to put, when you get in these smaller sizes like this one, you don't need to put a lot of hackle on it. Let's go back and take a look at what we did and just see how many wraps of hackle should we need. Well, 1, 2, and 3 would probably be fine if we wanted to. Okay, I just have so much fun wrapping this parachutes. Again, wrapping it towards us, we're going to switch our hands, go down underneath it. Now I'm locking it, really have it in there and go back around. We've seen that a couple times already. And there is our little PMD. Now don't worry about it, that there's 2 or 3 more times on the tape we're going to doing parachutes, and I'll be going over that again and again. It's something I get asked a lot about the way I wrap parachutes. Now we're going to go in here and trim off a little. You can't help with a parachute. I don't care how good you are keeping all that hackle out of the way. What you don't want is to tie that vein along the body, because it ends up right down here in the eye, especially on cripple patterns. So keep an eye on that. I'm going to tie it right off, and there's our PMD Parawulff.